Good morning. Welcome to Nigeria Now, showing on your digital first Pan-African news network, TOS Television. We have a couple of newspapers this morning, and of course, I'll be reading the headlines. We begin from the Daily Trust newspaper, where the banner headline there says, "Why fuel scarcity persists in Abuja, northern state." We have three riders. The first, vehicle owners sleep at filling stations. The second, an official says Russia-Ukraine war slows product importation. And then marketers are saying only affordable diesel will bring respite. And that's on page 5 of the Daily Trust newspaper. From the very top, 10 dangerous criminal spots to be wary of in Abuja, Lagos. That, of course, is on the front page, page 3 of the Daily Trust newspaper. And then besides that, we see COVID-19, federal government cancels pre-travel PCR test for vaccinated international travelers. That's on page 8 of the Daily Trust. Beside the picture of the day there, where we see queues in, of course, Abuja. Defection, 20 Cross River lawmakers sacked. Umahi's stay of execution struck out. That's on page 54. And then minister says why many households still lack water. An APC yet to screen aspirant, 4 days to convention. That is on page 15 of the Daily Trust newspaper. 24 killed, several houses burnt in renewed southern Kaduna hostilities. The writer says bandits kill village head, 19 others in fresh Zamfara attack. That story is on page 6 of the Daily Trust newspaper. We move over to the Daily Independent newspaper for this morning. And the banner headline, the big story is rising insecurity. Buhari deploys more police, DSS, NSCDC operatives to Imo. The writer says we're reaching out to aggrieved politicians, coming from Uzodinma, and that says, of course, Hope Uzodinma of Imo State. And beside the picture of the day, we see 9 years after, Buhari commissions new Lagos Airport terminal today. That was on page 7. EFCC grants ex-governor Obiano administrative bail. That was on page 7 as well. On page 6, we see CBN keeps rates, plans engagement with NNPC over fuel scarcity. That was on page 6. And then Buhari, APC betrayed Nigerians, says Yakazai. That's on page 6 as well. And then man warns of looming job losses, urges government intervention in energy crisis. Of course, that's on the front page right there. And then bandits kill 37, abduct 62 in Zamfara communities. That comes on page 6 of the Daily Independent newspaper. From the very top, we see court sacks 20 Cross River APC lawmakers. We move over to the Guardian newspaper, and it's talking about defection. Judiciary again axes 20 Cross River lawmakers. That's on the front page of the Guardian. A couple of writers there. The first, battle shifts to appeal court as Umahi withdraws stay of execution application. And then lawmakers removal in line with spirit of law coming from Senator Imoke. And then Oyebode says withdrawal complicate Umahi's matter. Issue certificate of returns to our nominees, PDP praise INEC. No cause for alarm, APC declares. And then beside the picture of the day, we see MPC retains lending benchmark after tough deliberations. That's on page 3 of the Guardian. And still on page 3, amid concerns, Buhari opens $100 million new Lagos Airport terminal today. On page 4, TB kills 4,100 persons daily, ails 30,000 others. And then Afiba Balola urges Buhari to visit Abuja Hospital. And then we see a big story there. APC convention, President Buhari, governors to meet over consensus list. That story is on page 2 of the Guardian newspaper. We move straight to the Nigerian NewsDirect paper from the very top. Ogun State, police parade 2 pastors over mysterious death of 20-year-old girl during Bible study. Obiano granted bail after 5 days in EFCC detention. And then NNPC denies reviewing depot price of petrol. That's on page 16. The banner headline there says party defection, INEC in dilemma as court affirms Umahi's sack. 3 riders the first, additional 20 assembly members removed in Cross River. APC denies membership of sacked lawmakers, and PDP says we will enforce High Court judgment. All of that is on page 3 of the Nigerian NewsDirect. And Buhari summons Uzodinma, Power Minister, Chief Economic Advisor. Federal government has implemented 150 ease of doing business reforms, coming from the minister on page 2 of the Nigerian NewsDirect. And then PRO talks about OAU VC appointment. Protesters storm campus with charms, fetish object. That's on page 3. On page 3 as well, federal government incurs 950 billion naira new domestic borrowing in first quarter of 2022, and that's coming from the DMO. On Blueprint newspaper, the big story there is amid renewed Imo sit-at-home order, Buhari says it's time to review security situation in Southeast. Of course, that's on page 6. A couple of writers there. The first says expresses worry over frequent power outages, summons Uzodinma power minister, attack on Obiozo's house, daring obnoxious, coming from Atiku. And terrorists killed Zamfara monarch, 19 others, and Erufai imposes curfew on 2 Kaduna local government. From the very top, talking about defection, like Ebonyi court sacks 20 Cross River lawmakers. That's on page 6 of the Blueprint newspaper. And beside the picture of the day, we see after 4 days in EFCC custody, ex-Governor Obiano granted bail. That story is on page 7 of the Blueprint. And then CIBN NIBSS to hold e-payment certification exam. That is coming on page 22 of the Blueprint newspaper. CSOs back NICOMSAT urge patronage for revenue generation. That's on page 7. On page 13, judgment evasion. Court issues warrant of arrest on Nzeribe. On page 21, Nigeria wheat import rises to 1.29 trillion naira in 2021. And on page 6, convention APC begins screening of aspirants today. On page 22, Buhari to commission new Lagos airport terminal today. And on page 22 as well of the Blueprint, why CBN may leave interest rate, others unchanged. That's coming from experts. We move over to the Nation newspaper, and the big story there is South PDP governors demand presidential ticket. 2 writers, the first, Obaseki absented meeting. The second, we can't stop Atiku, Saraki, others, says party. That's on page 3 of the Nation newspaper. From the very top, government cancels COVID-19 PCR test. Resurgence still likely. We see that story on page 28 of the Nation. And besides that, court sacks 20 Cross River lawmakers over defection. We've seen this story across other newspapers for this morning. Of course, this is on page 4 of the Nation newspaper. And Obiano's arrest, not political, says EFCC. Ex-governor gets bail. That is it on the Nation newspaper. And just underneath the picture of the day there, we see burnt houses. 23 killed, houses burnt in Kaduna, gunmen's attacks. That's on the Nation newspaper. And then the Vanguard banner headline there is presidency, ruckus in APC over zoning to Southwest. A couple of writers there. Beside the picture of the day, we see 18 political parties to participate in Osun governor poll. That's coming from REC. And then besides that, how we made Nigeria top 10 most improved world economies. That's coming from Lai Mohammed on page 7 of the Vanguard newspaper. And then we see a sub-headline there, bandits killed 43 in Kaduna. Zamfara as Governor Erufai declares 24 hours curfew in 2 local government. That's the Vanguard newspaper. And the last newspaper for this morning is the Punch newspaper. From the very top, bad fuel marketers submit report on damages, await federal government's compensation. That's on page 24. The big story there is APC chairmanship, Alamakura, Adamu, Yari, others learn fate as aspirant screening holds today. 2 writers, the first, governors initiate last-minute move for consensus candidate. And then Senate says APC caucus hasn't endorsed any chairmanship aspirant. That's on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. We have a couple of other stories, of course, that comes on the Punch newspaper and other newspapers that were read out for you this morning. Just make sure you grab yourself a copy of any of these newspapers and also stay updated on our website. That's www.tostvnetwork.com. And of course, like and stay engaged on our social media platforms. That is at TOS TV Network on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Thank you for joining us again today on Nigeria Now. We'll see you again tomorrow. Do stay safe.